There are cars to love because of the community, and there are cars to hate because of the community, okay? Unlike most things in life, there seems to be no 50 shades of gray on this topic outside of a few key cars. A few sport tuners that broke this mold, and the result is a car that might get you the best, worst thing to happen to the car community. I'm Alex Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram, and today we're talking about the Rockstar Recovery Lemonade of the automotive community, a car that feels like the last Skittles bag in a sea of Tootsie Rolls during Halloween, the official car of making your minimum payments on your Apple credit card after you saying you'd never use it again. This is a car that can be unanimously owned by exquisite automotive connoisseurs, or Jake, that has no intentions of replacing his exhaust after it fell off. You used to want to know what it took to own one, and now you want to know how to modify it. So today, we're talking about how to modify the Nissan 350Z. Jake's in the comments triggered. As you begin the journey of modifying a Nissan 350Z, you gotta know why it was even birthed into this world, okay? Which, by the way, don't forget to subscribe so we can keep growing what Martini Works is, which is gonna be the home of motorsport enthusiasts. Buy your shit from us. Nissan came off the Nissan 300ZX, which was the highest selling Z of all time. A car that, just like everything else, inched up in price every single year until the entire market of sports car buyers said, stop, which killed the car in the States after 1996. But until then, it was actually really good. The 300ZX, actually, short of being an electrical nightmare to work on if it was a used car, was a good car. It was twin turbo, a V6. You got a manual transmission, independent suspension that felt like warm butter. It was a great car and enough power opportunity that you could say, in all honesty, it rivaled GTR status. Yeah, that's right. So when Nissan stepped away from forced induction world when they came back with the new Z nameplate, they knew they'd have to do something wild to keep people interested in a car that was thought to be twin turboed like its dad. People have been wanting twin turbos out of non-GTR Nissans since like 1996, okay? You're not new when you come up with that comment. The result was a car that looked unlike quite a bit around it. You see, Toyota had introduced a Toyota Celica, which had pinched headlights and a raked rear end. Can't fool me, that's still front-wheel drive. Porsche was facing the pain of designing an ugly 911, and nobody will still let that down. BMW Z car made everyone uncomfy then and still now, and only companies that seemed to get it right were the ones that made parallelogram headlights and sharp asses. This would be cars like the Lotus, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Honda. I'm looking at you too with the S2K. So when Nissan released the 350Z in hopes to rejuvenate the sports car lineup using AJ Panchal and Hidetaka Lijama, that's the best you're gonna get. As the chief designer and engineer, people were blown away at what they found. What they got was a 3.5-liter V6 naturally aspirated engine that was rear-wheel drive and built around an analog experience with just enough technology to be relevant to the Y2K enthusiast. The only other car that I would say did this just as well would be the Honda S2000. Okay, the car was shared across a whole slew of auto shows leading up to this point, which looked wicked cool. Look at it. Prototype was sick as fuck, okay? And if you're an avid 350Z guy or gal, just remember The Run. That commercial. Go watch it. It's awesome. It's the best thing ever. It mimicked the old VHS video of those old BMW M5 and Porsches that used to run from cops in the nighttime in France. This was a real thing on YouTube, and then Nissan made a copy of it. The result was a car that was priced at $26,000 for the base model and sold over 36,000 units in the United States alone in 1 year. It was a very quick reminder that Nissan did, in fact, know how to make a fun sports car that wasn't forced induction. So you bought one, but now you want to know how to modify one of these Winton Marshalls, okay? So come on, bud, let's go. We'll talk about it. The 21st Century Z has a style that stays good for a good long time. The only thing that can potentially mess up these cars is you. But I want to make it super cool and spend my college money on this and screw FAFSA. I just want to be a cool kid with cool trumpet noises. Pump your brakes, kid. What you need is insurance and mental stability. Okay, so let's start with the engine. You either have a VQ35DE or a VQ35HR. The DE had high 280 horsepower or up to 300 horsepower, with the HR having 306 and 268 foot-pounds of torque. If you have the DE, the early ones, you likely have some oil burning issues, you likely have some engine ticking issues, and you likely want to keep your modifications under 400 horsepower. Otherwise, you're gonna have what's called financial crisis issues. The DEs aren't bad by any means, but the engine can only handle some of the basics just because it was a new engine that was coming in the 350Z. So an AEM intake is about $500. You can get some Mishimoto coolant cooling parts for about $250. You can pick your poison. Just buy it from martiniworks.com. I can't keep buying the Team off-brand ramen. They're about to strike. A tune is also possible on DEs, okay? That is possible, but they'll all put you around 300 horsepower on naturally aspirated, which is only about 20 horsepower bump, which I don't think is always worth it for the pricing. Now, for exhausts, ISR is hot. There's some other more common options.
Is that a dummy, Doug?
But no matter which way you go, remember that bigger is not better on these cars. You want to keep it toned versus rampant, because these big ass cans that the VQ get sometimes, they make Chewbacca noises. I'm gonna try and do it. Gels does a really good job with this noise. Was that good? I'm serious, there is a way to actually fix that noise so it doesn't sound bad. Now, Nissan forums justify the noise. That's what's wrong with the world today, because they don't sound good. Get something with a resonator. That is what's going to fix the problem with the noise of your exhaust. The HR objectively has more tunability that's safer with forced induction. You can do whatever you want with your 350Z, but instead of boosting your DE and praying it stays together, just stop being the way that you are and get it right the first time. Some people will say that the DEs and HRs aren't that different and you can add turbos to either of them. I'm trying to tell you the right thing to do. The HR does have objectively better improvements that make modifying the engine easier than the DE. So for the HR boys and girls, listen up, okay? You did it right. You've got the newer motor, which is a little bit more like the 370Z engine than the 350Z, with different cam profiles, some VVT upgrades, and a little bit more of a based power curve. It's like what they did with the GR86 to the previous generation. They cleaned up the curve. It's nice. The HR has a harder cast, taller design for less rod angle, and slightly increased compression ratio, which means if you want to, you can enter this thing we call the tune zone. The tune zone. We're in here in the tune zone, baby. Get on up in here. It's where shit's expensive and nothing makes sense, okay? This is the place that takes money from other things in our life that we should care about, but don't care because we got bad habits. The tunable kits out there, outstanding. There's a lot of cheap shit and there's a lot of really expensive stuff. Jim Wolf Turbonetics, you can get that from us, by the way. Or if you want to be a proper boy or girl and you want to go old period correct, HKS has a discontinued kit that you can sometimes find around in the marketplaces. An HKS twin turbo 350Z will be a future classic, okay? Easily forced induction on the 350Z platform that already has a great chassis and driving experience is a damn good way to go, and also spend about $10,000. Now, you can go with some wide wheels, and I'd recommend sticking with like straight spoke, mild concavity style wheels with a step lip of some kind. The car is curvy enough as it is, but if you just go with like just concavity, I'm not entirely sure I like it. It kind of needs a little bit of a bowing, okay? And because its hips don't lie, you're gonna wanna get something that gives it a little bit more sharpness. So a little bit of concavity, some lip, great options to go with. Work Kawamis, work Meisters, or even Graham lights if you want to. If you do go lip, don't go too crazy though, because you can go too far with wheel lips, and I think it looks a little silly. High offset wheels definitely look weird on this car, so be sure you go with something that gives you some depth. You can literally run any tires, Toyo, Nexen, Michelin, Nitto, or whatever you want on this car, because you can do anything with this car. You can show it, you can track it, you can drift it, you can even drag race it, okay? My recommendation, keep the sidewall thin though. When they start getting really chunky with the sidewall on these cars, I do think it looks a little silly. The only time you should go with really thick sidewalls is if you're drag racing this motherfucker. Okay? For $6,000, you can get an H&R lowering springs, some Koenig wheels, Nexen tires, an Infiniti exhaust, an AEM intake, window tint, cleaning material for your faded headlights and taillights, because you're gonna have that, Fortunato coilovers, and an IRP short throw shifter, and be ready for pretty much whatever the world wants to throw at you. And it's gonna stay reliable. That's a pretty good budget to keep in mind for these cars. Add $10,000 for forced induction. No matter what you do, it's gonna be 10 grand. Add $2,500 for wheels from Japan of any kind. And add $4,000 if you want to have any sort of special stuff, if you want your car to look different than the other 25,000 Nissan Zs that are out there. But the good news, the fact that there are so many of these builds, you'll be supported no matter which way you go with this build. I promise you. These are a great platform. The community is awesome. Most of them know what they're doing, and you'll be able to spot the ones that don't. So how do you modify your 350Z? Easy, baby. Take $15,000, buy 140,000 miles, 17-year-old Nissan. Quickly realize that it's not a Toyota, and that's okay. And get to recovering the things to make this look like a proper Z. You're gonna clean up the headlights, the taillights. You're gonna get new brakes and rotors, because those are probably absolutely fucking cheeched. And you're gonna get yourself a proper interior detail. Okay, once you realize that the car is actually kind of fun, even if it's stock, you're gonna put it on some coilovers and you're gonna drive it, okay? You'll then fall in love. you'll fall into the Z car ecosystem, which is like Apple, but it's less culty. Everything from here, it's all on you. Pop on a quality intake and save money for a good exhaust with a goddamn resonator, okay? And kick the stereotype of shitty sounding Zs. Burn yourself a Suicide Boy CD track and get those windows tinted, and you'll have a car that properly feels like fun. This car can, without a doubt, do it all. So no matter what you choose to do, invest in good stuff for the car and it'll treat you good back. Remember, it's a Nissan. It needs you to be nice to it or it will just become another annoying Z. And when they start falling apart, they fall apart fast. But most importantly, if you're building or just bought a Nissan 350Z, add it to our build threads over at martiniworks.com. We're aiming to make build threads great again and we need your help to do so. Add it and let me know what you think and what should we talk about next. I'm Alex Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram, and we hope you enjoyed this video. Adios.